Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. In today's video, we are going to be previewing the upcoming season for the Golden State Warriors. However, before I get too far into it, I want to remind you all to leave a like and subscribe. I've been appreciating all the support that I've been receiving lately, and I hope to see that continue. Without further ado, let's talk about the Warriors. Before I really think that we can adequately preview the upcoming season for this team, though, I think that we need to reflect upon and discuss the transactions that the team made in the recently concluded offseason. It started in the NBA draft where they selected James Wiseman with the second overall pick. I think that they should have gone with LaMelo here despite the positional overlap that he has with Steph Curry. I think that he has a much higher ceiling than anyone else in this draft. He was the only player in Tier 1 for me on my draft board, but James Wiseman is probably a better fit for this roster both now and moving forward, as someone who can really fill in at the center position, has a much higher upside than any of the other options that they have there. So it makes sense to me, and I can't rip on them too much for this. Personally, I would have taken LaMelo, but like I said, I don't blame the Warriors for going with Wiseman. They also had 2 second-round picks, the 48th pick, which they used to select Nico Mannion, and the 51st pick, which they used to take Justinian Jessup. Neither of those two guys made my draft board, which was the 46 players that I viewed as rotational pieces at some point in their NBA careers. But they were two of the players that were very close to making it on that barely missed out. Jessup is a draft and stash player who is going to be playing out this season with LaMelo Ball's old team, the Illawarra Hawks, in the NBL in Australia. He's a high-level three-point shooter who can shoot it off of movement, and that's a valuable skill to have in today's NBA. So I think that once he comes over, he has a chance to be an impactful player as a shooter off the bench. And Mannion is a very skill-centered point guard who doesn't have a whole lot of athleticism and burst. I do think that being in the Warriors development system is going to be good for him, though, and he's got a chance to develop and reach what his ceiling potentially could be in this system than he would basically anywhere else. Outside of the draft, they obviously lost Klay Thompson for the entire season with a torn Achilles, which was one of the sadder things that I can remember. Klay Thompson is one of the most fun players to watch in the entire NBA, and it's just really a bummer that we won't get to see him play for 2 entire seasons. So really praying for Klay and hoping that he can recover well from that injury. But in order to fill in his place, they traded a first-round pick as well as a second-round pick for Kelly Oubre. I believe that the first-round pick conveys into being 2 future second-round picks if it is not a pick that falls between 21st and 30th in next year's draft, which I probably don't think that it will. I'm not quite sure that this is going to be a top 10 team in the NBA. So overall, they were able to acquire Kelly Oubre in exchange for second-round picks, and that's a pretty solid deal. I get it. It's going to be a big hurt to their salary cap. It puts them even further above the tax. I believe they're $42 million into the luxury tax, which means that their luxury tax bill is going to be obscenely high, but the front office has proven that it's willing to pay for a winner. I'm just not quite so sure that this team is going to be a winner like we've seen out of the Warriors in years past. In free agency, they made 2 signings that I really liked. They brought in Brad Wanamaker on a 1-year, $2.5 million contract. Wanamaker is a solid option as a backup point guard. We'll talk about him more later, but I liked this signing quite a bit for the Warriors. I think he is one of the better backup point guards on the market, and he's going to work and fit right in alongside their core of hardworking veterans. So that was a move I liked. Also signing Kent Bazemore to a 1-year minimum was a really nice move for this team. I actually thought that Bazemore was someone who would be a candidate to receive the mid-level exception from a team. Maybe not the entirety of it, but something along the lines of like a 2-year, $15 million deal. And obviously he didn't. He got signed by the Warriors for a 1-year minimum, and I think considering how much he can bring to a team, that was a very nice bargain deal, and I think he's going to help this Warriors team out quite a bit as an off-the-bench wing. Now that we have outlined what the Warriors did in the offseason, I think that we are ready to preview the upcoming season for the squad. Now, when I do this exercise, I talk about each player individually and lay out my expectations for what I think that they can do this season. And then at the end, I take the cumulative totals of my expectations for the players and make some predictions about what the team could do for the entirety of the season. As always, we'll start at the point guard position when going through the individual player previews. And with this team, you have to start with Steph Curry. Curry is a high-level shooter, one of the best shooters we've ever seen, probably the single best shooter that the game of basketball has ever seen. He's terrific in ball screen actions. He's great off the ball. He's a terrific passer. He's one of the most complete offensive players that we've ever seen in basketball, and his ability as a shooter is rivaled by none. The problem is, for him to be most effective, he needs to be playing off of the ball for large portions of the game, coming off of pin downs and floppy sets in order to get really good looks coming off the ball screening actions. However, the Warriors have lost a lot of their secondary playmaking options over the past year and a half. Shaun Livingston is gone. Andre Iguodala is gone. Klay Thompson is out for the season with an injury. That essentially... Kevin Durant is gone. Almost forgot about that. Almost left out a top 15 player of all time. My bad. So Draymond Green is really the only good secondary playmaking option for this team at this point. And so Steph Curry won't be able to thrive in his optimal setting as the off-the-ball scorer that we've seen him be. He's going to have to play on the ball quite a bit more, and I think that that's going to hurt him and make him a bit of a lesser player. But I still think that he's going to have a terrific season. I believe that when I was laying it out, he'll probably either be a first-team All-NBA guy or second-team All-NBA guy. He's still like a top 5 player in the league, and he's going to be a very impactful guy for this Warriors team. He's really the engine that makes this team go, and if they are able to win a playoff series, it'll be on his shoulders. The backup point guard on this team is Brad Wanamaker, as I talked about before. I really liked this signing for the Dubs because I think that he can come off the bench and give you a high-level defensive effort while also being a respectable shooter, 36.9% last season, and a decent playmaking option. He's certainly no Shaun Livingston. Livingston was one of the best backup point guards in the league during his time with the Warriors. But Wanamaker is a solid defender, like I said before, and he's going to play his role, bring a nice veteran leader into the locker room. And I like this signing for the Warriors. He can give you like 15 to 20 minutes per night and be just reliable to do what you need him to do in those minutes. He can play both the 1 and the 2, so I'm sure that we'll see him play alongside Steph Curry in some lineups as well. Now we will move on to the wing position. On the wing, we'll start with Andrew Wiggins. Wiggins was considered the next superstar in the NBA when he was drafted by the Minnesota Timberwolves with the number 1 overall pick in the 2014 NBA draft. However, he just hasn't really panned out. He's had multiple seasons where he's averaged 20-plus points per game, but he's never been a super efficient scorer. He's not a very good playmaker. He doesn't give much effort on the defensive end of the floor. And all of those combined make him like a very average NBA player when he has the tools to probably be like an all-star type. I think that if he was ever going to reach that potential, he had to get out of Minnesota, and I don't think that there are too many places out there that would have been a better spot for him to fall than Golden State. I think that this season we're going to see him take a step forward. He's going to be giving better effort on the defensive end of the floor with encouragement from NBA legends like Steph Curry and Draymond Green. On the offensive end, he's going to be more willing to share the ball and make plays for his teammates now that he has more elite-level offensive players surrounding him. He's hopefully going to take a step forward in efficiency as he's going to be able to generate better looks for himself, considering the gravity that players like Steph Curry have on the offensive end of the floor. I'm counting on Wiggins taking a step forward this season, and the Warriors are really going to need him to do that in order for them to be anything more than a fringe playoff team in the Western Conference. The next player to talk about is Kelly Oubre. Oubre was a really nice grab for this team. They gave up a very well-protected first-round pick that I don't believe will convey as currently expected to, and instead I think that'll probably convert into 2 second-round picks. So they essentially traded second-round picks for a young wing who has shown an ability to score the ball at a high level, is a decent shooter and a good finisher at the rim. He's also a decent defender. He's nothing special, but he's definitely right around league average on that end. The reason why he's not considered like a super high level wing player moving forward is because he has little to none playmaking ability. If he can improve as a playmaker, though, he could get paid a very high price following this season when he is a unrestricted free agent. I'm not as high on Kelly Oubre as many are, but I do think that he's a solid NBA player, a good rotation piece, and someone that can be a really solid starter on a team moving forward. I'm not completely sure if he'll start on this Warriors team. I think he probably will. Like Wiggins will play the 2, and Oubre will play the 3, then Draymond and whichever one of the centers you want would be the starting lineup. That would make sense to me. So, yeah, like I said with Kelly Oubre, really strong scoring wing who needs to take steps forward in playmaking if he ever wants to take another step forward into the upper echelons of NBA players. The next guy here is Kent Bazemore, who, like I said, was one of the biggest bargains in the entirety of NBA free agency in my mind. He's terrific on the defensive end of the floor, can guard multiple positions, is very switchable, is a high-level athlete that has good enough length to guard bigger players. He might take a step backward on that end. I really hope he doesn't, because he's genuinely a really high-energy and fun player to watch on the defensive end of the floor. I remember him playing a huge role off the bench on that Mike Budenholzer coached Atlanta Hawks team that absolutely ran through the Eastern Conference that one year before being, I believe, swept by the Cavaliers, led by LeBron, in the Eastern Conference Finals. And I have pretty pleasant memories of Kent Bazemore from those years, and I still think that he can be a very impactful player because of those defensive contributions I talked about before. He's not much on the offensive end. He really struggles finishing at the rim, only shot at 40% at the basket, which is a ridiculously low number. But he is a spotty three-point shooter, but once you put it all together, a pretty average and respectable guy from the three-point arc. Shot at 35.6% from 3 last year, if I'm not mistaken. I just think that he's going to be a really useful wing player coming off the bench for this Warriors team. I think he was worth much more than the minimum because of his defensive value, so I really, really like this signing. The next guy here is Damian Lee. Lee is another guy that I like quite a bit as a role player. I didn't watch too much of the Warriors last year because they were very bad, but from what I've heard and what I've seen, Damian Lee is a pretty high-level role player on the wing. He was asked to play a bit bigger of a role than you would like last season as he was inserted into the starting lineup. I think he'll be much better coming off the bench this year, but as a bench player, he is a pretty solid shooter coming off of screens, and he's a decent defender as well. So while he's not necessarily going to be a game changer for your team, he can give you like 12 to 15 respectable minutes night in and night out. And for a team that I at first thought was going to struggle with depth, I actually think he will be an interesting piece for them. The next player to talk about here is Jordan Poole. Poole was a player that I absolutely loved coming out of Michigan. As a Big Ten fan and a fan of Wisconsin, I didn't like it when we played Jordan Poole, but he was always an entertaining player to watch. I thought that his game was going to translate really well to the NBA because he's always been a really good shooter off of the dribble. And as a pull-up scorer, that is certainly valuable in the NBA. We've seen players like Donovan Mitchell, Devin Booker make all-star games because of their high ability to score as a pull-up shooter. I thought that Damian Lee would not necessarily be on the same level as those guys, but certainly at least be a valuable offensive weapon because of that. However, he really struggled with efficiency in his rookie season. Even at Michigan, he was never much of a playmaker, and that trend continued in his rookie season with the Warriors, where he wasn't much of a passer whatsoever. On the defensive end, he can get a bit lackadaisical, doesn't always give the best effort, and that leads to him being taken advantage of by opposing players. But I still am a believer in Damian Lee. I don't know if it's as being him becoming the high-level starter that I once thought that he could be, but I do think that he at least has a role in the NBA as a good scorer off the bench. So, I think I keep saying Damian Lee. I'm talking about Jordan Poole. All these, oh gosh, I really hope I haven't been saying the names all along. Damian Lee was what I talked about when I said decent 3-and-D role player off the bench. Jordan Poole is the guy I'm talking about now, who is the pull-up shooter who doesn't do much else. I really hope I wasn't messing that up all along. Next player, Michael Mulder. Mulder is not someone I've seen a whole lot of. At Kentucky, he was pretty good defensively and was an athletic wing player, but I think he only played like 3 games or something like that for the Warriors last year. I haven't seen him play. He was in the G League for most of the year, and I've probably never seen a single G League game in my entire life. That might change because I saw that the G League Ignite team with like Jalen Green and like Isaiah Todd. Who else is on that team? There's a bunch of. I think Jonathan Kuminga's on that team. There's a bunch of guys. That guy that Deshaun Nix, I think is his name. Deshaun Nix, something like that. That might change when that team is on TV because I think that they might be really exciting to watch and give you a good idea of what next year's draft class could look like. But getting back to Michael Mulder, I don't know too much about him. I just know that he's good defensively. We'll see if he's able to earn rotational minutes for this Warriors team this year. The last wing player here is the Juan Toscano Anderson. Hope I said that right. I think I did. It's not too hard of a name to pronounce. But I really don't know too much about this guy either. He was on a 2-way contract last year, and from what I've read, it's likely that he will remain on a 2-way contract. Not too much else to say about him there. Know that we have covered all the point guards and all the wings. We're ready to move on to the big man positions, where clearly we have to start with Draymond Green. I'm genuinely a believer that Draymond Green is going to have a bounce-back season this year. I still have him ranked as like a top 30 or 35-ish player in the NBA. Because of his defensive impact, he's like, I believe I read John Hollinger calling him a linchpin on that end of the floor, where he can really just hold it all together for the Warriors as a defensive commander. On offense, he's a really good playmaker for a big man, does a really nice job of distributing the wealth and finding shooters coming off of screens. He can run ball screens as a big man, which is kind of exciting as a pick-and-roll ball handler. I don't know that he'll be able to do it at as high of a level that he did in like 2015 to 2018 when we really saw prime Draymond. But the Warriors are really going to need him to step back and find that form as an all-star caliber player once again if they want to be a contender. Last year, he really gave iffy effort on both ends of the floor, and that's simply not going to cut it if this Warriors team wants to be any sort of a contender in the Western Conference. Next guy here is James Wiseman. He's really the franchise big man of the future for this team. I was a pretty big fan of James Wiseman. Like I said, he was number 2 on my board behind LaMelo Ball. He was the top of the second tier of players in my opinion, and I do genuinely think that he has a chance to make an all-star game one day because of his dominant defensive capabilities. I shouldn't say that because he has not really shown to be a dominant defensive player yet, but there's certainly a lot of potential there as a ridiculous athlete, 7'1" height, 7'6" wingspan, which is just ridiculous. You can see him just swallow shots up on the defensive end of the floor as a rim protector. On offense, if he can develop that three-point shot, he's got a chance to be a super lethal pick and roll, pick and pop big man who can do a little bit of each. He profiles as like a more athletic Miles Turner to me, with maybe people always make the prime DeAndre Jordan comparison, but if he can shoot it, he's got a chance to be a much better player than DeAndre Jordan ever was. And I think DeAndre Jordan made like a All-NBA team a couple times in his career. So I genuinely am a believer in James Wiseman, and I think that he has a chance to really blossom and become a good starter on this Warriors team. Next guy here is Marquise Chris. Chris was really considered a bust for a large portion of the beginning of his career. People just were not seeing it with him. He was really struggling on the Phoenix Suns, and I believe they did not pick up his fourth-year option, which is super unusual for someone that goes in the top 10 like Chris did. But he ended up falling to the right team as the Warriors signed him as a free agent, and he found a role in the league for himself as a rim-protecting big man who is a rim runner in the pick and roll on the offensive end of the floor. It's nothing special. It's not worth using. I think it was the 7th pick that the Suns drafted him but he has carved out a niche for himself in the league after really struggling to start out his NBA career, and something needs to be said about that. He has a chance to help this Warriors team. I think he probably should be the day one starter for them. I certainly think that there's a chance that James Wiseman passes him up. But I think that Marquise Chris is a good high-level center. I shouldn't say high-level, like mid-level. He's a decent like average to below average starting center who can give you good minutes and play his role. Next guy here is Kevon Looney, who is probably Steve Kerr's favorite player of all time. It seems like Kerr has always played him much more than he ever should have. But Looney is a fighter. He just can't stay healthy, and it's really a bummer. But when he is able to be healthy, he's a plus defensive player who's a good rim protector. On the offensive end, he's a decent finisher at the rim. He's made an effort to start shooting threes, I'm pretty sure, but to not much success. Overall, with Kevon Looney, you just have to hope that he can stay healthy. Availability is the best ability, and Kevon Looney doesn't really have that ability. But if he can stay on the court, he will certainly factor into this Warriors big man rotation and has a chance to be an impactful player in their rotation, I guess, this year once again. Next guy here is Eric Pascal, who was first team All-Rookie this past year. Pascal is a really good finisher at the rim, does a great job of slashing, has a bit of playmaking chops, as a decent passer for a big man. He wasn't terrific on the defensive end this season, which is a bit surprising to me. I didn't watch too much of the Warriors, like I said before, because they were pretty much a dumpster fire for the majority of the year. But based off of the advanced stats only, so once again, like I said, didn't watch too much about this. This is not much from the eye test, but the advanced stats thought that Eric Pascal was a wildly overrated player on the defensive end of the floor. And coming out of Villanova, I thought that he would do well on that end. So I think that there's a chance that those stats are completely wrong. The reason why he struggled on defense this year was because there was no semblance of a good team around him, of a competent team around him. So once you give him really high-level players to help him out, I think that we could see him take a huge step forward on the defensive end of the floor, and with his slashing abilities on offense, that's certainly a solid rotation player. Where he needs to improve is in the jump shot. Last year he shot at only 28.7% from 3. If he can get that up into the league average on a higher volume area, he has a chance to really be a nice complementary piece who could start in the NBA for a long time, which I'm sure is more than the Warriors probably thought they would get from him when they selected him 41st overall in the 2019 NBA draft. Last guy here was selected slightly before Eric Pascal in that same draft. The Warriors traded multiple second-round picks in order to move up to get him, and clearly they were in love with him because he was on their G League team for quite a while. I think I forgot to say his name. It's, Alan Smailagic. Correct me if I'm saying that wrong, but I believe that's how it's pronounced. Haven't seen too much of this guy. He didn't play in college, and usually that's where I see these G League guys and make my opinion on them. But he didn't play in college. He came from overseas as a 16-year-old and played in the G League for a couple of years. So I don't know too much about him. From what I heard, he's a guy who plays pretty hard and is maybe going to be like a stretch big man at some point in the future, but really can't shoot it at all that well. Currently, actually, no, I think I looked at his G League stats and he shot at like 34% from three last year. So yeah, maybe he's going to be a stretchy big, but from what I've read, he struggles to have much of a feel on the court, and he's going to have to improve in just his understanding of the game in order to really become a legit NBA player. He's probably someone that's going to get some minutes in the G League for the Warriors this season. Overall, you have your all-star in Steph Curry. You have some decent complementary pieces in Draymond Green and Andrew Wiggins, and you have the fingers crossed hope that he pops off. I meant to say Draymond Green and Kelly Oubre for the complementary pieces, and then my fingers crossed, hope he pops off, becomes like the all-star that we all thought he could in Andrew Wiggins. So if Wiggins takes a jump, Steph Curry and Draymond Green stay healthy and are playing like their peak selves, Kelly Oubre continues to be a reliable second or third scoring option, and they get good minutes out of the role players like Brad Wanamaker, Kent Bazemore, Marquise Chris, Kevon Looney, and James Wiseman steps in and is an above-average starting center off the bat. This Warriors team probably has a ceiling of being a top 4 or 5 seed in the Western Conference. I'm not sure that I genuinely believe that that's what's going to happen, though. I would say that if I were predicting for this team, they'll probably be in the play-in tournament as somewhere between the 7th seed and the 10th seed. If I had to predict their record for the upcoming year in a regular 82-game season, I would probably say that they'll win somewhere between 42 and 47 games. So in this year's shortened season, if I were forced to make a prediction, I would say probably between 37 and 41 wins would make sense to me. That would probably put them in a position to be in the play-in game at a minimum, and perhaps maybe even be out of the play-in game. I certainly do think that there's a chance that happens, but I certainly wouldn't bet on it. I guess the last thing to talk about here is Steph Curry's MVP case. I think that he's got a really solid shot just because of the lacking offensive options alongside him. If he's able to have a James Harden-esque season where he's dominant on the ball and scores at a really high level, I think that he would probably have good enough numbers to be a strong favorite to win the MVP. I just don't necessarily think that that's Steph Curry's game, and I don't know that he's going to be as dominant on the ball as he would need to be in order to be an MVP type player for this year. I think he's going to be fantastic, and we could see him have one of his best years yet, especially if Kelly Oubre and Andrew Wiggins prove that they can be competent secondary playmakers for him, which would allow him to play off the ball and run around screens like Steph Curry does at his best. But if those guys aren't able to step in and play the Andre Iguodala type role, then I think that Steph Curry could really struggle due to just being asked to do too much and being forced to play out of his role as someone who's forced to play on the ball more than you would like him to. Overall, like I said, I think that this Warriors team is going to be a lot of fun to watch. I'm excited to see what James Wiseman looks like. I think Curry's going to have a great year. Kelly Oubre and Andrew Wiggins are some interesting wings. This is going to be a fun team. I'm just not necessarily sure that I buy into them being a top 5 team in the West. Let me know in the comment section what you think. Am I underrating the Warriors? Am I overrating them? According to Kevin Pelton, I am. I think that his system had them as the 14th seed in the Western Conference. So if you agree with that, then let me know. Leave a like and subscribe if you did enjoy this video. I'm hopeful that you did. Hey, NBA preseason starts today. Can't wait for tonight. That's going to be a great time. Yeah, I think I've covered everything now. That's going to be it for me. Ladies and gentlemen, I will see you all again very soon.